Well, for any of you guys who watch the channel, this is the final build bike check video. Ironically, the build has been a long time coming since I picked up the frame back in 2022. So with that, we'll get started. It will cover geometry, preferences, why I purchased it, very technical. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. Starting with the frame, it's a 2022 COMMENCAL Meta SX V4. It's a 27.5, 29 mullet, large. I'll give a few geometry numbers on why I purchased this frame. The rear end has a 446 chainstay, relatively medium long for today's geometry, keeping it in the high position with the flip chip down here. This puts it at a 64-degree head angle, and it is a 470 reach. All numbers that are very, very quality for me. And the last thing, especially living in Arizona, not a lot of steep descents, a lot of climbing. So for a big bike, having a steep, long seat tube angle, I believe the seat tube is 77 degrees. It can fit a long dropper post, and it is a nice upright pedaling position. So geometry numbers aside, it's kind of a no frills frame. Very easy to work on. If you want information on bearings and parts like that, I can give that to you. But basic internal cable routing, nothing crazy. It's a 4-bar yoke-driven design with quality anti-squat, anti-rise numbers. The anti-squat is just over 100%, so pedals really nicely. Anti-rise, I don't know off the top of my head, but it feels good under braking. Now let's start from the ground up. I mentioned in a short I recently posted, the wheels I'm running are reserves with the carbon DH30 in the rear and the HD alloy 30 in the front. Both are 32 holes, and with such a rigid rim in the rear, it is bulletproof and a little lighter in the front. I've actually had these built up with the same spoke tensions rear to front, both sharing, I believe, 400 newtons spoke tension. With the rigidity and the robustness of this rear rim, having a little bit lighter spokes does give a little bit more of a flexier ride. It matches the feel of the front, so it honestly is quite a balanced feel while having a completely bomb-proof rear. So something to consider if you are looking for a wheel option. And tuning a wheel can come down to a lot of different things other than what it actually is. Sticking with the wheels, both wheels are built with a Hope Pro 5 hub. A lot of Hope parts on this bike. I come from an engineering background, and I have a preference for tight tolerances and quality machining, as well as quality parts, and Hope, in my opinion, makes some of the best. So hubs are Hope Pro 5, and if you notice, mounted onto those hubs is the Hope floating rotor, 1.8 millimeter thick, front and rear. And also front and rear are 200 millimeter direct mount. So what that means is no need for any adapters. As you can see right here, it mounts directly to the post. And one reason I bought this frame also was the rear is 200 mil direct. So no need for adapters, meaning that along with a rigid caliper, which I'll talk about in a second, there's no extra play or slop or bad tolerances being transferred through an adapter onto the caliper, making alignment issues come into play. Next, on the wheels, Schwalbe Albert Gravity front and rear, obviously 27.5, 29. These have been an amazing tire. The traction is unbelievable. If you can hang with a little bit more drag, it is uncompromising in traction and feel, and they're actually very silent on the trail. Tread pattern resembles a little bit of a moderate assegai, and having the same tread pattern front and rear gives a predictability that you will know if you've ever run the same tire front and rear. So I reckon you give it a try. I run 30 PSI to 32 PSI in the rear, 26 to 28 in the front. Continuing with the ground up, talk about group set and drivetrain. A little bit more customizable here. I run a Shimano drivetrain. I have SLX cranks and chainring with a XTR rear derailleur. The reason I chose the XTR rear derailleur is, although it does come at a premium price point, the cage material is a mix between carbon for the cage and titanium for some of this. The rigidity of this derailleur out of the entire entire Shimano lineup comes at the benefit of having smooth, crisp shifts as long as the derailleur is running. It takes a beating, and with a carbon cage like this, it does not bend when hit, so the truing of any alignment is very easy and noticeable if something happens, but realistically this thing will stay as straight as can be unless completely broken off or your hanger is bent. That is paired with an XT shifter, which for me, I am a fan of the double upshift, and the trigger shift is nice when climbing. So with the XT shifter, you can skimp out. You can just get your SLX cranks and chainring. It's just a matter of weight when it comes to their stuff. These things are indestructible. Ridden these a lot of downhill and stuff, and they have not bent, worn out. The spindle is still great. The XT cassette shaves just enough weight to make the price worth it for unsprung mass on the rear. That's also something to take note with the XTR derailleur, is that with the titanium and carbon material choice, this is one of the lighter derailleurs that you can get, also keeping the unsprung mass on the rear light as possible. Flipping over as we continue from the ground up, have the Hope Tech 4 V4 brakes. These are the calipers themselves. I run the Hope red pads. Those come up here to the Tech 4 lever. Now, just a preference on these brakes. I've tried a few different brakes. I've landed on these. I do have a background a little bit in riding some motorbikes when I was younger, dirt bikes and stuff. I have an opinion that these are some of the best feeling brakes on the market. They have a more automotive, linear feel towards the bite point and stopping power, to where the power is indistinguishable to the most powerful brakes out there. I consider these the most powerful brakes I've ever ridden. I have not ridden any long-term Mavens or things like that, but from what I can tell, being a little bit of a heavier guy, these things never wear out on long descents, and they are always stopping without any trouble. The bite point and reach adjust is tunable to get both levers feeling exactly the same, no matter if your bleed's a little spotty. And with that too, again, back to the Hope products, everything's rebuildable with these, as well as their hubs, but I have rebuilt the levers with a seal kit, and you can keep these things feeling as brand new as long as you have them. Lots of spare parts are available. These paired with the floating rotors, in my opinion, are the best braking combo you can have with pretty much no compromise. I did skip as we're going from down to up. I run the Crank Brothers Mallet Enduro pedal. So, really good system. You probably know all about that. Just get yourself a pair. Working our way up, which I'm gonna save the suspension for last because it has a lot of notes. The dropper post is a 1-up V3 dropper. It is a 210 millimeter dropper with the pins added to decrease the travel to 200. I raise the lowest point a little up high because I like having a seat in between my legs a little bit. I don't like it completely slammed out of the way, but with this dropper post, with the 210 millimeter and with the travel reducer pins in, you get some of the best bushing overlap through the entire dropper. And that just means that you have longevity and the actuation is very smooth. I'll give you a little demo. Extremely fast, super reliable. It has never worn out, easily rebuildable, and I have had the best time with this dropper post. Mounted on that dropper post while we're in the topic is the Ergon SM Pro Enduro saddle. It hits the pressure points nicely. It's low profile. It is very sleek. You can slide on and off the back very nicely, so it doesn't feel like it ever catches if you are going down real steep stuff and you get your butt over your rear wheel. I opted for the oil slick rails because I'm not a big oil slick guy unless it's just one piece, just to give it that little bit of spark and finish. So, you know, totally personal preference, but saddle wise, it's hard to beat Ergon and their R&D in terms of pressure points and how they feel on the trail, especially on long pedal days, pedaling something this big and heavy. As we come up, I'd like to touch on the Fidlock water bottle cage. Can't beat it. Look at how clean that is. Not much else to say. Super easy, accessible on the trail. You don't have to fiddle with anything. You can drink out of that while pedaling almost anything, and it'll come on and off without any thought going towards where your hand's at, where the water bottle's at. All right, as we get to the top of the bike, one of the most critical parts of any bike are contact points. Pedals, you know, everything about contact points is preference, but when it comes to cockpit, this can make or break the feel of your ride and the quality and safety of it as well. Continuing with cockpit stuff, headset is a Cane Creek 110. It's their premium offering, but material wise, it's made out of 70-75 for the cups. The bearings are incredibly well made, and it's double sealed in both the race down here, the top cap, and it just, there's no wear marks on anything. Every time I take it apart, they have lifetime warranty on their parts for that, so why not buy it? This spacer is actually for kids ride shotgun. It's a seat for my kid. It mounts right here, so don't mind that. It is a 10 millimeter spacer followed by another 10 mil on top, so I run 20 millimeters of space on top of the head tube with a Industry 9 35 clamp. Stem is the Industry 9 A35, so 35 millimeter bore clamp. It is a 40 millimeter long stem. It does have the option, You can flip the orientation of the stem to raise and lower your bars an extra 5 or 8 millimeters, I believe, and that just gives a little bit of tuning. I ride it in the highest position. I find that I'm just used to it. Could totally flip it and get higher rise bars, but you know, that's just kind of what I've come to find works best for me. Speaking of bars, I do have the 35 mil rise 1-up carbon bars. They're cut to 780 millimeters wide. I would say for anybody that is looking for an upgrade to feel on their bike, you don't have to be a suspension wizard. You don't have to have the softest tire pressure, but overall these bars will reduce trail chatter, 100% guaranteed. Sometimes it's small things like that that can really elevate the feel of your ride, and I would recommend these to anybody. They're downhill rated. They will be phenomenal on the trail. They add comfort and support to your ride while being extremely lightweight. Continuing on cockpit, I run the DMR Death Grips with the flange specifically. They are a mid-profile grip, not super thick. I prefer the flange because it gives me a frame of reference of where my hands go when I'm riding. I know I like being slammed in a little bit BMX, and with that, I would say always measure the distance that your levers are from the edge of that grip. For me, if I'm slammed on the inside here, I have total clearance of my thumbs, and I have a perfect index finger position on my brake lever. And that goes for both. So the angle's the same, and then, or the distance is the same here, and the angle, everyone has a level on their phone. Go ahead and match your angle to your brake levers. Both of these from the top of this reservoir sit at 25 degrees down. Just helps me know that there's some consistency. Every time you set it, just slap your phone on. I measured off of this top surface here, and then they're both even, they're both perfect, and you'll notice it when you feel it. There will be no discrepancies in your fingers. Again, continuing with the Hope parts, have the Hope dropper lever. This thing is extremely tactile. It will actuate my dropper post while I have full weight on it. It'll drop, and a little bit of tape here because the barrel adjuster got snagged. But one nice thing is this dropper lever has a bite point adjust, so you can make this thing actuate under absolutely no travel if you do please, as well as it has a bolt here that can allow the dropper lever to slide in and out. So you can completely fine tune the position of this lever exactly how you want it and exactly how much leverage you want over that. Now, a little note, cable routing, I have just enough to make sure that if bars spin, nothing's gonna get pulled out. I have a little bit of Velcro here. This completely silence this. If this ever hits the bar, these are buttoned up nice and tidy. This doesn't hit anything, and that allows for just absolute silence. All right, the cream to the crop for any bike build video setup. We got suspension. This is the EXT Astoria V3S. It's an OEM variant of this shock, giving a steel damper shaft, a factory tuned hydraulic bottom out, and a LOK, their lock climb technology, which is phenomenal. I'm gonna throw a little bit of technical information at you here. Now, this bike being a yoke driven design puts a lot of leverage over shock bodies. The leverage over this shock will be measured from this bolt to the top bolt, not the shock itself, because technically the shock is extending via this yoke. One reason I chose the steel damper shaft is that is one of the most rigid options for a coil shock. when you have a yoke driven suspension. On top of that, I actually have, if you see right here, I'm gonna come around here. This is a spherical bearing upper shock mount from DH Sign, an Italian company. So this whole shock is Italian through and through. That is gonna give me 5 degrees of freedom in any direction on this upper shock mount. So what that allows is if there's any frame flex that is transferred into this eyelet through the shock body, this shock mount will handle any of that flex and torsional flex, any flex and torsional flex in any direction, allowing for the shock to move as free as possible. And that just gives ultimately a smoother ride and helps with longevity with the internals of the shock itself. Now for spring rate, I run a WPS 450 pound spring with 2 clicks of high-speed compression and 10 clicks of low-speed compression, both measured from open. I run 8 clicks of rebound measured from closed. I always count my compression clicks from open because I like to rely on the base valving to handle compression and then add as I need. Rebound, I measure from closed because as a heavier rider, I've always been on the more shut side of rebound damping. And with this shock, it is a very lively, active shock, and getting the rebound just right does make this feel absolutely butter on the trail. Now up front, sporting all the front end weight and traction, is an RXF 38 M.2. Now this thing is phenomenal. I would say technology wise, Öhlins has some of the best air springs and damping in the business, and they outclass even some of the newest stuff from Fox and RockShox in my opinion. There's nothing you can throw at this fork that it won't handle. I personally prefer an overdamped, I say appropriately damped, but an overdamped feel. I run lower spring rates than you would think on both the fork and shock with a lot of damping. I have 112 PSI in the main chamber, and then I have 222-ish roughly PSI in the ramp up chamber. So main chamber here, ramp up chamber at the bottom. The ramp up chamber basically acts as volume tokens for any other regular air spring that you would see. That allows you to fine tune the progression curve of this fork. I basically use about 95% of travel on any given day, and the last is reserved for really big hits. I have 6 clicks of low-speed compression from fully open, and I run 1 click of the high-speed compression from fully open. And then I am 10 clicks open from fully closed on the rebound. The damping characteristics of the EXT and the Öhlins is very similar. I would also have been happy with an Öhlins rear shock. I was able to get this EXT at a deal, and I've been extremely happy with this. For a big bike and for downhill laps and park laps. The ramp up chamber here will control any bottom out to full capability. You'll never overclap this fork if it's set up correctly. The hydraulic bottom out on this shock will fully control your bottom out in the last 15% of the stroke completely. Will never be clapped as long as you have the right spring rate. So overall, really happy with this. It has ground hugging traction, and you can throw almost anything you want at this thing. I've done bearing swaps. There is absolutely no wear on the machine bolts or any of the hardware. Most bearings come out pretty good. I just change them over time as things wear out. Yeah, that's it, folks. I know for you guys who have watched some of the YouTube shorts I've posted, I've tinkered a lot with this thing. I am my own mechanic besides building wheels and taking apart dampers. So if there's any questions that you have on any component on this thing, I am more than happy to share my opinions, thoughts, and or help with your own setup, advice. I have a pretty technical background, so I choose my parts and components very thoroughly and specifically when it comes to bearings, bottom brackets, the headset. Pretty much it all goes on as if I'm gonna ride it for the rest of its life, and knowing that it's gonna last exactly that long. So thanks for tuning in. I'll be posting some riding videos soon. Just let you know, we've come off of a pretty big crash about a year ago. So the riding has taken a bit of a pause for what it was. We're on the trails and stuff, but I don't record a lot. I ride to mostly enjoy my time now. But as the summer comes around and the bike park opens up, I'm gonna be recording a little bit more. So stay tuned. Have a good one.